Yes, friends, welcome to Galaxy Online Learning powered by Galaxy Tutorials. I am Sunil Desai and we are studying the first chapter of history, the rise of nationalism in Europe. And this is the third lecture, and we are going to the third unit of the chapter, the age of revolutions 1830 to 1848. Okay, so we saw that after the Vienna Treaty, that was in 1815, the the regimes which had come, the monarchical regimes which had come to power, they slowly started to consolidate their power. Okay. At the same time, the liberal nationalists, which were belonging to the educated middle class, among whom were professors, school teachers, clerks, and members of the commercial middle class, they started revolting against this monarchical regimes. And these revolutions started taking place in many regions, many different regions of Europe, mainly in the provinces of the Ottoman Empire, the Italian and German states, Ireland, and Poland. The first revolt took place in France in July 1830. The Bourbon kings, the Bourbon dynasty, which was restored after the Vienna Treaty, was overthrown by liberal revolutionaries, and they installed a constitutional monarchy with Louis Philippe as the head. And as the Austrian Chancellor Metternich had remarked, what he had remarked, when France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. Matlab, what does it mean? That if something happens in France, immediately you will see the repercussions of those actions in the whole of Europe. Okay? So, similarly, after the July Revolution in France, immediately an uprising in Brussels took place, which led to Belgium breaking away from the United Kingdom of Netherlands. Another event that mobilized nationalist feelings among the educated elite across Europe was the Greek War of Independence. Greece by then was a part of the Ottoman Empire, which was ruled by the Muslim kings since the 15th century. It was a big empire, the Ottoman Empire. Okay? The growth of revolutionary nationalism in Europe sparked off a struggle for independence amongst the Greeks, which began in 1921. And this nationalism in Greece was supported by Greeks who were in exile, and also from many Western Europeans who had sympathies for ancient Greek culture. Poets and artists praised Greece as the cradle of European civilization. And these poets, they mobilized public opinion to support its struggle against the Muslim Empire. The English poet Lord Byron, you must have heard about Lord Byron, and you must have learned his poems too. Lord Byron organized funds, and later he went to fight in the war, but he died of fever in 1824. So the war of independence for Greece continued. Finally, a treaty was signed in Constantinople, that is called the Treaty of Constantinople of 1832. This treaty was signed between the Ottoman Empire on one side and the great powers of Europe, that is Britain, France, and Russia on the other side. And according to this treaty, Greece was recognized as an independent nation. Okay. Now let us see the romantic imagination and national feeling. How romanticism favored the nationalism feeling. Culture played an important role in creating the idea of the nation. Art and poetry, science, stories, music help express the shape of nationalist feelings. Let us look at Romanticism. A cultural movement. Romanticism was a cultural movement which sought to develop a particular form of nationalist sentiment. Romantic artists and poets generally they criticize the glorification of reason and science. Romanticism they criticize glorification of reason and science. They focus instead on emotions. A romantic person always focuses on emotions. He doesn't focus on facts. I hope you know about it. Okay? So, they focus on emotions, intuitions and mystical feelings. Their effort was to create a sense of shared collective heritage. A common cultural past is the basis of a nation. On page 14, you see a picture which was drawn by the French painter Delacroix. He was one of the French romantic painters. In this picture, what you see is that he has dramatized the incident and focused on the suffering of women and children using vivid different colors. By dramatizing the event, he has sought to appeal to the emotions of the spectators and to create sympathy for the Greeks. Other romantics, such as German philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder, claimed that true German culture was to be discovered among the common people, Das Volk, common people as they call it in Germany. It was through folk songs, folk poetry and folk dances that the true spirit of the nation was popularized. So, collecting and recording this form of folk culture was essential to project nation building. They emphasized on vernacular language and the collection of local folklore. Why? Because they thought if you want to reach to the masses, you should be able to emphasize on folklore, because then you can connect with them. Because if you are in the local language, the vernacular language, because most of the masses were illiterate. This was especially so in the case of Poland, which had been partitioned at the end of the 18th century by the great powers Russia and Austria. Okay. Even though Poland no longer existed as an independent territory, national feelings were kept awake through music and language. See, Poland was partitioned at the end of the century by the great powers of Europe, Russia, Prussia and Austria. So, the existence of Poland as a nation was not there. But the people of Poland had kept the national feelings awake through their music and their language. Karol Kurpinski, for example, celebrated the national struggle through his operas, and through his music, turning folk dances like the polonaise and the mazurka into national symbols. What Karol Tutinski had done? He had turned the folk dances like the polonaise and mazurka into national symbols. Language too played an important role in developing nationalist sentiments. Language was very important because through language you are going to reach to the masses, and the more you reach, the nationalist feeling will grow in more, and it will be easy to fight for the freedom. After Russian occupation, the Polish language was forced out of school. When Russia took charge of Poland, what they did was that they threw away Polish language from the schools, and instead it was replaced by Russian language. Okay, that this Russian language was imposed everywhere. In 1831, an armed rebellion took place against this Russian rule, but it was crushed by Russian. Following this, many members of the clergy in Poland began to use language as a weapon of national resistance. Okay. So, the language Polish was used for church gatherings and all religious instructions. As a result, a large number of priests and bishops were put in jail by the Russian government. Why? Because these bishops, these priests in the churches, they used Polish language to preach, to give any religious instructions. Means they were not giving religious instructions through Russian language, though Russian language was imposed on them. So Polish language became a way to prove nationalism. Okay? These priests and bishops were punished by, they were sent to, how they were punished? They were sent to jail or in Siberia. The use of Polish came to be seen as the symbol of the struggle against Russian dominance. In the 1830s, in Europe, the common people faced a lot of economic hardship. The population of Europe was growing every year, and the number of jobs were less compared to the people who wanted jobs. So unemployment grew at a faster level. So at the same time, industrial revolution was taking place. So population was migrating from the rural areas to the cities, and they were staying in overcrowded slums. Small producers in towns also faced competition from the imported goods from England, which were machine made, and therefore they cost much less compared to the small producers which produce goods in a very small scale. And this was particular about the textiles. The small producers produced textiles at their home, and small workshops which were partially mechanized. But when the cloth came from England, which was machine made, it was much cheaper. Okay. So they were not able to sell their cloth. In those regions of Europe where still aristocracy ruled, the peasants struggled under the burden of feudal dues and obligations like the manorial services. The rise of food prices and The food prices were rising day by day, and if there was a poor harvest that year, it escalated populism in town as well as country. So people became poor and poor every year. The year 1848 was one such year. In that year there was lot of economic struggles. Food shortages and widespread unemployment brought the population of Paris on the roads. Okay. There was shortage of food and there was shortage of employment. So the people came on the streets of Paris. Barricades were erected, and seeing so many people on the road, Louis Philippe was forced to flee. He fled Paris. A National Assembly was formed, and the National Assembly proclaimed Republic. It granted suffrage, voting rights to all adult males above 21, and it guaranteed, the National Assembly guaranteed the right to work. National workshops to provide employment were set up by the National Assembly. Earlier in 1845, this happened in 1848, earlier in 1845, weavers in Silesia had led a revolt against the contractors who supplied them raw materials and give them orders for finished goods. What the contractors used to do? They used to supply raw materials to the weavers of Silesia. Okay? And they used to give them orders, and for their orders they used to supply raw materials, and they drastically, what they did was that they drastically reduced the payment of these weavers. So, what happened at that time in Silesia? A journalist, Wilhelm Wolff, described these events in a Silesian village. How he has described, let us read it. Okay? In that particular village, which inhabitants are around 18,000, cotton weaving is the most widespread occupation. Means most of the people in that village, what they do is they are weavers. They are doing cotton weaving. The misery of the workers is very high. The desperate need for jobs has been taken advantage of by the contractor. The villagers need jobs, and as they need jobs, they are desperate for jobs. So this advantage has been taken up by the contractor, who has reduced the prices of the goods they order. He said that I will give you so and so money, and that money was very, very less compared to the work to be done. So on 4th of June at 2 p.m., a large crowd of weavers emerged from their homes and marched in pairs up to the mansion of the contractor, where the contractor lived, and they demanded higher wages for the work. First, they were treated with scorns and they were threatened too. But these workers, what they did? They forced their way into the house. They forcibly entered the manor of the contractor, and they started smashing his glass pane windows, his furniture, okay, his porcelain. Another group entered the storehouse and it plundered the supplies of cloth kept over there and tore it to pieces. The contractor got scared and he fled away, but to the neighboring village. But the neighboring village, the people of the neighboring village also were not ready to accept him. So he returned back to his own village. But now, this time, he brought army along with him. And there was a scuttle between the army and the weavers, and in this 11 people weavers were shot down. Okay, so this was happened in Silesia. Now let us come to the revolution of the liberals, what happened in 1848. As you see, the poor, the peasants, the weavers were revolting against the monarchical regime. At the same time, what was happening was that in many European countries, a revolution led by the educated middle class was also underway. Events of February 1848 in France had brought about the abdication of the monarch, and a republic based on universal male suffrage had been proclaimed. See, in other parts of Europe, where there were no independent nation states like Germany, Italy, Poland, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, men and women of the liberal middle class combined the demands for constitutionalism with national unification. Okay, they demanded, the middle class men and women, they demanded along with national unification, what should be done? Constitutionalism should also be done the way it was done in France. They took advantage of the growing popular unrest to push the demand for the creation of the nation state on parliamentary principles, that is, constitution, freedom of the press, and freedom of association. At the same time, in German regions, a large number of political associations whose members were middle class professionals, businessmen, and prosperous artisans came together in the city of Frankfurt and decided to vote for an all-German National Assembly. On the 18th of May 1848, 831, how many? 831 elected representatives marched in a festive procession to the church to convene they marched in procession to the church of St. Paul, where that was a place where the Frankfurt Parliament was convened. They drafted a constitution in this particular convention, in this particular parliament, which was convened at St. Paul Church. They drafted a constitution for a German nation to be headed by a monarch. Okay. When the deputies, it was to be headed by the monarch, but it will be ruled by the parliament. Was just only monarchical head was the king. So the deputies offered the crown on these terms to Frederick Wilhelm IV, the king of Prussia. The king of Prussia, they offered that you be the monarch here, but the rule will be done by who is going to govern? The parliament is going to govern. So this king, he rejected it, and he joined other monarchs to oppose the elected representatives. While the opposition of the aristocracy and military became stronger, the social basis of parliament eroded. So it no longer remained social. The parliament was dominated by the middle class, who didn't look up to the demands of the workers, the artisans, and so they lost the support from the workers, from the artisans. In the end, what happened? Troops were called in, military was called in, and the assembly was forced to disband. The issue of extending political rights to women was another controversial thing within this liberal movement. In this liberal movement, many women had taken part. Large proportion of women had taken part. They had participated actively over the years, but there were no constitutional provisions they were not given any political rights. So women had formed their own political associations. They founded newspapers and they had taken part in political meetings and demonstrations. Despite all this, they had their own newspapers, they fought, they took processions, they had political meetings. Even after all these things, they were denied any political rights. They were denied suffrage. They were not given right to vote during the election of the assembly. When the Frankfurt Parliament was convened, the women in St. Paul Church, the women were allowed, but they were to be only observers. They had to just observe the parliament working. They had to observe it from the stands of the visitors gallery. So though conservative forces were able to suppress liberal movement in 1848, they could not restore the old order again. The movement was suppressed, but the old monarchical order could not be formed. Monarchs now began to realize that if you want to get rid of this revolution, because they are going to now they are suppressed, but again after some time again they will come up. So to stop these revolutions to come up again and again, what we need to do is we have to grant certain concessions to the liberal nationalist revolutionaries. Hence, after 1848, the autocratic monarchs of Central and Eastern Europe began to introduce changes that had already taken place in Western Europe. Thus, serfdom, slavery, bonded labor was abolished both in the Habsburg dominions and also in Russia. Further, the Habsburg rulers granted more autonomy to the Hungarians because the Habsburg Empire was ruling over Hungary. So they gave more autonomy to the Hungarians in 1867. Okay. Now let us come to the next unit, how Germany and Italy was formed. After 1848, nationalism in Europe moved away from its association with democracy and revolution. Nationalist sentiments were often mobilized by conservatives for promoting state power. Now what happened was that after 1848, the nationalist movement slowly shifted from democracy and revolution towards strengthening the power of the monarch, and this was done by the conservatives. So, why they wanted to do it? To achieve political domination over Europe. This can be observed by the process by which Germany and Italy came to be unified as nation states. Okay? See, national feelings were widespread among middle class Germans who in 1848 tried to unite the different regions of Germany into a confederation, into a nation state governed by an elected representatives. This liberal initiative to nation building was repressed by the combined forces of the monarchy and the military. They were supported in large numbers by the landlords of Prussia, Landlords of Prussia, who are called the Junkers. Junkers are who? Landlords of Prussia. From then on, Prussia took on the leadership of the movement for national unification. The Chief Minister of Prussia, Otto von Bismarck, was the architect of this process, and he carried this out with the help of the Prussian army and the bureaucracy. The three wars that were fought in the 7 years with Austria, Denmark and France ended in the victory for Prussia, and it completed the process of unification. In January 1971, the Prussian King William I was proclaimed the German Emperor in a ceremony which was held at Versailles. On a very cold morning of 18th of January 1871, an assembly comprising the princes of the German states, the princes of the different German states, representatives of the army, important Prussian ministers, including the Chief Minister Otto von Bismarck, gathered in the unheated hall of mirrors in Versailles, in the Palace of Versailles, to proclaim the new German Empire headed by Kaiser William I of Prussia. So, what you see is that the national building process in Germany was demonstrated by the Prussian state power. The new state placed a strong emphasis on modernizing the currency, banking, legal and judicial systems of Germany. Prussian measures and practices often became a model for the rest of Germany. The Prussians had a dominance over Germany. Okay, and this is how Germany was formed. Now let us see how Italy was unified. Like Germany, Italy too had lot of political fragmentation. Means there were many different states. Okay. Italians were scattered over several dynasties. Different dynasties ruled in where Italian speaking people were staying. They were also under the Habsburg dynasty, which was a very big dynasty at the time. During the middle of the 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states, of which only one, Sardinia Piedmont, was ruled by an Italian princely house. So of the 7 states, only Sardinia Piedmont was ruled by the Italian royal house. Rest all 6 states were ruled by monarchies or dynasties which were not Italian. The north was under Austrian Habsburg, the center was ruled by the Pope, and the southern regions were under the domination of the Bourbon kings of Spain. Even the Italian language had not acquired one common form. So Italian language also was divided into many regional and local variations. There was not one form of Italian language. It was divided into many different dialects. During the 1830s, as I told you before, Giuseppe Mazzini had sought to put together a coherent program for the unification of the Italian Republic. He had also formed a society. What was the name of the society? Young Italy, for the dissemination of his goals. To follow his goals, to reach his goals, he had secretly formed a society called the Young Italy, which I told you before. The failure of revolutionary uprisings both in 1831 and 1848 meant that the mantle now fell on Sardinia Piedmont because that was the only state which was ruled by the Italian royal. So the revolution uprisings were repressed. So now it was a duty, or now it also depended only on this state which was ruled by the Italian royals. Okay, to unify Italian states through war. And at that time, this Sardian Piedmont state was whose ruler was whom? King Victor Emmanuel II. In the eyes of the ruling elites of this region, a unified Italy offered them the possibility of economic development and political dominance. Chief Minister Cavour, who led the movement to unify the different regions of Italy, was neither revolutionary nor a democrat. The Chief Minister Cavour, who led this movement to unify Italy, was not a revolutionary nor he was a democrat. Like many other wealthy and educated members of the Italian elite, he spoke French better than Italian. Okay. So through a tactful diplomatic alliance with France, what did Cavour do? Cavour did, he had an alliance with France. Sardinia Piedmont succeeded in defeating the Austrian forces in 1859. Now Sardinia Piedmont, as I told you, was the only state ruled by the Italian royal. So if they wanted to bring Italy under their control, to unify Italy, they had to have a war. Now Austria was ruling a lot of part of Italy. So what Cavour was the chief minister under the monarch, okay, King Victor Emmanuel II. What he did? He did a tactful agreement. He had an alliance with the French people and French monarch. And what they did is that he defeated the Austrian forces in 1859. Apart from regular troops, a large number of armed volunteers under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi had joined the fray. Okay, the troops were there, the army was there. Along with the army, many volunteers under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi had also joined this war. In 1860, they marched into South Italy and the kingdom of the two Sicilies. The troops of Sardinia Piedmont and the volunteers of Garibaldi, they marched into south part of Italy, which the Austrians were ruling. They also marched into the kingdom of the two Sicilies and succeeded in winning the support of the local people, the local peasants, the local farmers, in order to drive out the Spanish rulers. In 1861, Victor Emmanuel II was proclaimed king of the United Italy. However, much of the Italian population whose literacy rate, the Italian population had a very high literacy rate, okay, they remained blissfully unaware of the liberal nationalist ideology. The peasant masses who had supported Garibaldi in southern Italy had never heard of Italia. The word Italia, the country Italia, they have never heard what Italia means. What they thought was that Italia means La Talia is the name of Victor Emmanuel's wife. What a funny thing, what a joke. Okay, they supported Garibaldi, but why Garibaldi was talking about Italia? But these illiterate people, these illiterate peasants, they were not knowing what is Italia. They thought it meant La Dalian is the name of the wife of Emperor Emmanuel. Okay. Now let us come to the strange case of Britain. We saw how Germany got separated. We saw how Italy got separated. Now let us see a special case of Britain. The model of the nation state of Britain, the model of the nation state, some scholars have argued, is Great Britain. In Britain, the formation of the nation state was not the result of sudden upheaval or revolution. Great Britain was not formed through any upheaval, nor it was formed through any revolution. The state of Great Britain was the result of a long, drawn out process. Prior to the 18th century, there was no British nation. Understood? There was no British nation before the 18th century. The primary identities of the people who inhabited the British Isles were ethnic ones. All the people who stayed in the British Isles had different ethnicities, such as English, Welsh, Scot, or Irish. So there were 4 different ethnicities who lived on the island of Britain. All of these ethnic groups had their own cultural and political traditions. All these 4 ethnicities. But as the English nation steadily grew in wealth, importance, and power, it started extending its influence on the other nations of the island. Okay, as you see in this picture here, there's a map of Britain come map. No, sorry, it's not given over there. Okay. Yes, so English nation started slowly influencing other nations on the island. The English Parliament, which had seized power from the monarchy by then in 1688, at the end of the protracted conflict with discussions, was the instrument through which a nation state with England at center came to be forged. So, what happened was that the English Parliament was the main instrument, was the main person to forge this nation state with other nations of that island. The Act of Union, which was signed in 1707 between England and Scotland, that resulted in the formation of United Kingdom of Great Britain, meant in effect that England was able to impose its influence on Scotland. The British Parliament henceforth dominated by its English members. It was going to control Scotland. The growth of a British identity meant that Scotland's distinctive culture would no longer be in existence. The Catholic clans that inhabited the Scottish Highlands suffered terrible repression whenever they attempted to assert their independence. In Scotland there were many Catholics, and when these Catholics tried to revolt against the Britishers, they were suppressed. The Scottish Highlanders were forbidden to speak their Gaelic language or wear their national dress. The Britishers, they forbade the Scottish Highlanders to speak their Gaelic language and to wear their national dress. and large numbers were driven out of their motherland. Ireland too suffered a similar fate. It was a country deeply divided between Catholics and Protestants. Ireland is a country which has both the Protestant sect as well as the Catholic. The English helped the Protestants of Ireland to what the English did. The English were Protestants. So what they did, they slowly what they did was that they supported the Protestants of Ireland to establish their dominance over a largely Catholic country. The Irish country was basically predominantly a Catholic country, but the British, who were prominently Protestants, they exerted their dominance over the Catholic in the country. Catholic revolts against British dominance were suppressed. After a revolt led by Wolfe Tone and his United Irishmen failed, Ireland was forcibly incorporated into the United Kingdom in 1801.